I have just started my semester here at university, so it's been a little hectic, and I feel like I just live at this desk constantly. And I also look like my mom today, which is fine because I'm comfy, but it is what it is at this point. It's 5 p.m. and I'm filming. There are no rules anymore. Hey y'all, what's up? It's Coach Mara. Today's video is all about what I wish I knew when I first started coaching. Or, a better title, a new coach's guide to their first practice kind of thing. Now, I started coaching maybe like four years ago. Yikes, 4 years ago now. So I'm gonna talk about what I wish I knew when I first started coaching. I was coaching grade 6s, which if you've never played before, grade 6 is like basic level. Like we're dealing with like how do you pass a ball kind of thing. Like we're definitely not at the advanced level. So my goals were pretty simple. Have them learn the skills and the like motor functions involved, and to just get them excited about playing the game so that they keep wanting to do it. So I wasn't too concerned about winning or losing or what we were doing, like what was the strategy. I just wanted them to learn to love it so then they would continue to learn over the years if I wasn't there. That was my main goal. And as a coach, you really have to think about every time you're about to coach, what are your goals? So I always fell into the category of the goal is to make the players better and to foster their learning and their understanding and to make them grow as players. My goal not so much was to like win championships, kick ass, take names, or kick names and take ass kind of thing. If anyone watches Marvel out there, I hope you understand that reference. Anyways, that's not me. Even if you knew me when I was playing, like I was competitive. What my mom likes to call fleeting competitiveness, where it's like in the moment I'm really competitive, but then once the moment's over, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I don't have the like super intense like need to be the best because I'm content with myself and my abilities, and that's how I played and that's how I coach. So my goal has never been to like be the best and make my team like in kind of like a fearful way, like demand respect. Like they need to respect me in order for us to win. If we don't win, I fail as a coach. That wasn't my vibe. If that is your vibe, cool, awesome, great. You need to figure that out. Figure out your vibe before you head into that first practice, because that first practice is the one that the players are going to figure you out. Like, what do you want? What do you value? What do you focus on? That's what they're going to think about in that first practice, because you're both trying to figure each other out. Like, the players are trying to figure each other out as well as you, if you haven't coached before or coached there before. And then you are also trying to figure out how to coach, and also all of these players and their parents, and there's a lot of things. So, rule number 1, take like an afternoon and just sit down and be like, what kind of coach do I want to be? And it's really helpful to like think back on your past coaches if you did play. I knew that in my mind I was a combination of my favorite coaches, and I wasn't a hard ass. That wasn't my vibe. I didn't like that. But I'm the type of coach that's very involved. I'm like showing people how to do it, and if I make a mistake in a drill or something when I'm demonstrating something, that's okay. Like I'll say like, if I mess up, I'm out of practice, haven't stretched, like, but this is what you guys should aim for, and try and describe it the best I can. Think about all of the drills that you loved to do, and then think about the drills that you liked to do, and then the drills that you really hated doing, but you knew they had a purpose. So, for instance, when I first started coaching, I sat down and I just made a list of all of the drills that I could think of. It didn't matter if I liked them, I didn't like them. It's like, what could I remember from my past years of playing that I could do and run and remember how they work. logistically, like where do people go, how does it configure, what are the I forgot the word. Progressions. What are the progressions? Like, how do you add things on to make it harder or more fun? So that's how I started. I just wrote a list. And then the ones that I remembered that I really loved doing, I'd put a star beside. It was like, I love doing these because they were fun, but I also love doing them because I got to like play a lot. So Queen of the Court, great one. Everyone loves that one because it's fast paced and it's quick, but it's also like really intense skill building and teamwork because you're in a group of like 3 or 4 and you have to cover an entire court. So that was a big one. I hated butterfly, and that's why I don't coach using butterfly, because it was just so boring and it was just me by myself. There was no like camaraderie. I couldn't talk to anybody. I couldn't like build a connection. It was just like somebody's hitting at me and I'm like moving in a W shape. Like, this is kind of boring. I don't like this. So when I was playing, I knew I didn't like it. So when I was coaching, I was like, okay, I'm definitely not going to do this, because if I didn't like it, the chances are that somebody else doesn't like it are pretty high. So that one was immediate X. But things like that, like make a list and really think about what drills do you remember? Just write them all out. If you can, write out how they work. And then if you can't think of any, go online. There are so many resources online. My favorite coaching resource is Get the Pancake. She's on YouTube and she has a blog online. It's about really volleyball coaches and making sure that you guys are prepared. So go check her stuff out. It's fantastic. I watched a lot of her content when I was originally coaching because I was really out of my depth. I was like, I've never done this before. I don't know what's going on. Talk to one of your coaches that you had. I found one of my coaches that was willing to chat with me, and they were so willing to talk with me just to share their knowledge and say like, hey, this is what I found to have worked and what really didn't work with this age group. Like, don't do this, but make sure you do this kind of thing. That kind of experience and that kind of firsthand knowledge you can't really get in a lot of places. And especially from a coach that knows you and knows how you think, it's really, really valuable. So even just sending a quick email, being like, hey, I know you're really busy, but I'm following your footsteps. I'm starting to coach this age group. Would you be willing to have a coffee with me? Or would you be willing to like send me some pointers? What do you think I should really focus on? Things like that, things that are really valuable that you can't really get out in the internet or the culture or whatever. You kind of need that firsthand experience, because I hate to say this, but I'm going to have to, because volleyball is a club. Like, it's a who do you know kind of club, which sucks. And I hate that about this sport and about sports in general, because it shouldn't be about that. It should be about teaching kids, fostering learning, improving a lifelong learning process with physical activity. But instead it's turned into this weird, if you're new to the game, nobody's going to tell you anything, which doesn't make sense and it doesn't help anyone. So that's why I'm making this video, to help. If you are teaching children, so like grade 6 up until, I don't know, college. If you're teaching anywhere from middle school to high school, you need to build a connection with parents. And I really wish I did this early on. But again, nobody told me and I had no idea that's how it worked. You really need to connect with parents right away, out of the gate. Because young kids especially, they don't have many role models that they look up to. It's basically teachers and parents. And then coaches is like the third one. So you really need to make sure that you are connecting with parents. You know their email address, you know their names, and you know their kid, so the two match. Because if you don't know the parent that matches with the kid, you're gonna have a lot of problems, especially when it comes to organizing rides for games, or not so much anymore, but like anything that you wanna do as a team, especially in older years. If you wanna go see like a college level game all together, like that's a really good learning experience. But you need parents, and you need them to know that, yes, you are learning. Yes, this is the first time you've done this, but this is not your first foray into the arena. I remember that when I was first coaching in the grade sixes, I made it very clear to parents that would talk to me, because I wasn't too great at the whole parents thing. I had someone who was helping me with that and who knew all of the parents already, so thank goodness. But when parents would come up to me, they would ask me like, hey, how long have you been coaching? And I would tell them honestly, because the last thing you want to do is lie to parents and say, you know what, honestly, this is my first time coaching, but this is not my first time in the volleyball arena. I've been playing for blank amount of years. So up until then, I'd been playing for 6 or 7 years straight. And I was on a provincial going volleyball team. Like, there was a lot of things that were building that confidence, even if it wasn't that coaching confidence. Because right away, it's going to be kind of tough for them to trust you because it's their kid, right? Every parent is protective of their kid. That's their job. And it's our job as coaches to acknowledge that, but also to realize that we are also an extension of parents in a very small environment and in very one particular subject. So, something to keep in mind. The best way I make a practice plan is literally sitting down with like a piece of paper, and I will think about, okay, what does this team need to work on? Do they need to work on serving? Do they need to work on passing? Do they need to work on free balls? Do they need to work on getting their spike approach? Like, what aspects need work? What do they need to improve on? So I'll think about that for a minute, and I'll be like, okay, now what drills can I do that will target those areas? So say I have a team, theoretically, I have a team that needs to work on serving, let's say. What drills can you think of that would help a kid with their serving? So I would think in my head, I'd be like, okay, well, I'm a player in my own brain on this imaginary team. So I need to work on serving. What would I need? Well, first I would need to warm up my arm. Okay, so I'd start the practice and I would say, everybody do your warm up. Great, grab a partner, warm up your arms. That to me is step one always. Every practice, because every practice we end up doing some sort of arm movements in volleyball, so I always make them warm up. But I'll get back on track here. Warm up your arms is step number one. Then when you want to get into serving, you want them to not hurt themselves, right? Because even if you warm up, they're still not going to have the momentum right away. It always takes a few minutes. You know, when you start playing and you start serving, it's like, oh, you miss a few. Oh, I need to hit harder. Oh, I threw that one weird. Oh gosh. Like, you got to give them a few minutes, have them start from the attack line with partners, and then serving to their partner. Once it goes over, you take a step backwards. That's my favorite. And then you keep taking a step backwards until you hit the back line. That's always a great one. Another one is a classic middle school one where you have both sides are serving, but you're considering them as teams. So you split your team in half and put them on each half of the gym. You get a representative from each team, and then they switch sides and sit in the court on the ground. And their goal is for their team, which is opposite to them, to serve to them on that's the person that's on the ground. And the person that's on the ground has to catch it. And then once they catch it, the person that served it gets to run over here. The first side with all of their team members sitting on the ground wins. That's always a great one. See, that kind of mentality of going through it step by step and remembering, like, you were a player. You know how this works. You know what kind of things will help serving. You know what kind of things will help passing because you did them for I don't know how long, but you did them. You have firsthand knowledge. You have firsthand experience. Trust that. I'm going to say something that's like, I heard this from in actually a different quote, but I've kind of modified it to fit what we're talking about today. But it's like, you are a better coach than what you give yourself credit for. That's huge. That took me a long time to deal with and to like truly recognize, because I was so insecure because I had such great coaches. And I was like, man, I really want to be like the coaches that I had, that I really admired and that I really looked up to and respected. How do I do that for these kids? These kids, I don't know. I'm barely a coach. I haven't done this yet. You need to relax, take a deep breath, and remember, you're a better coach than what you give yourself credit for. You've done this. You've been in the player seat. You've been firsthand experience in a practice. You know what it's supposed to look like. You know how it's supposed to go. Trust that feeling.
Editing Mara here. I just wanted to pop in and say really quickly, if you have never played volleyball, that's totally okay. Find someone that has and ask their opinion. Ask them to co-coach with you. The worst they can say is no, and the best they can say is yes, and then you've made a new friend and you've learned something new. A win-win situation.
The best advice for new coaches is make your expectations really clear from the first practice. So when I say expectations, everyone's like, oh, like respect, yada, yada, yada. Like, yes, but respect is earned. So is trust, but that's kind of irrelevant to what we're talking about. When I say expectations, I mean, what do you expect from players? I.e., for me and my co-coach, it was coming to practices 10 to 15 minutes early every practice to set up nets, to get ready to go so we can start right at our start time, which was, I think, 3 or 4:30. We didn't want to waste time. Like, people arrive at 4:30, then they put on their stuff, then they have to set up the nets, and we're into like 4:50 and we've lost 10, 20 minutes. We don't want that. So that was one of our expectations. Another expectation was like zero tolerance policy for bullying and stuff. Kids are mean, man. Kids are so mean, especially teenagers. Man. So we made it really clear. It was like, hey, if you want to be a jerk, that's not cool. We can't vibe with that. So that was straight away. That's our expectation. Another expectation was if you're on a competitive team, especially in the school season, you may, depending on players and where they want to play in the more older age groups, like what positions they want to play and how many players you have, yada, yada, yada. It all dictates chemistry on the court and playing time for players. And I know lots of coaches go through this and it sucks because we're the one person that connects players and parents to a sport. And sometimes parents get upset. And I get it because parents care about their kids and they want their kids to be better. So I totally get it. But you need to make that expectation clear and being like, if you are on a competitive team, it's like playing time may not be equal. And you need your players to agree with that if that's your goal as a team. If that's not your goal, if you just want to improve collectively, then you don't need this expectation. Things like that, things that to you don't want to deal with. Like you can't, non-negotiables is what we used to call them, non-negotiables. So if for you, your thing is like punctuality, me, that was punctuality. I needed my players all to be there at the right time. End of discussion kind of thing. Bullying and harassment. End of discussion. You need to figure those out. Take the time, sit with your brain and think about it. This doesn't none of these things happen quickly, I'll mention. So take some time out of your schedule and really think about, okay, this is how I want, ideally, this is how I want everyone to act, and this is how I want everyone to function within the team, okay? Okay. When it comes to conflicts, either with other coaches or parents or administrators or anyone else like that, I want to give you some good advice that I was given a long time ago, and it was listen twice as hard as you talk, if that makes sense. So you should listen more than you speak. I'm not a psychology major. My co-coach is. She could probably talk on and on about this, but I'm a business major, so I don't know the psychology behind this. But from my personal experience, I wish I had listened to people more than I had tried to explain myself. You have to realize that you are not going to please everyone, which is hard for me because I am a people pleaser by nature. So it's tough. It's something I had to come to grips with, but you aren't going to please everyone. You're not. It's impossible. You can't please both the parents and the administrators and the spectators and the players all at once. it's not going to happen. So when in times of conflict, whether it's with players, parents, yada, 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 you need to stand or sit or whatever and listen and really think about what they're trying to tell you. Don't just take, like, if they're yelling at you, like parents love to yell at coaches. I don't know why. But when they yell at you, really think about what they're actually saying behind those words. And you don't have to justify your actions. You don't. If they're unhappy, they can take action in other ways. Now, that's not to say, like, if you're in the wrong, then apologize, definitely. But if you're not, and you're confident in your decisions and what you chose and why you chose them, you don't need to explain that to anyone, let alone to someone who may not know the industry or doesn't know you, really. You don't need to explain yourself and justify your reasonings. You're a coach. Young coaches always get taken advantage of because we're always in the minority versus all of these older coaches that are in the industry that have developed their sense of gravitas or authority, where parents, administrators, and anyone will respect them very quickly because they're at an age where it's like, oh, they must know. Like, I trust them. We won't bother them with that. But if you're like 19, 18, 17, 20, the likelihood that someone will automatically think that you don't know what you're doing is way higher than someone who is in their 50s, 60s, 70s. Like, it's very unfortunate, but it is a societal bias, as my anthropology prof would say. And just remember, if you're in the right and you believe that it is right, that you believe in the choice that you made, and you're not in the wrong, like you didn't hurt anybody, nothing bad has happened, trust your instincts. Trust your coaching gravitas or authority that you know what you're doing, and stick to that because nobody can take that away from you. Okay. Whew, that was really intense. This is a very unrelated note to everything, but whistles now are like a volleyball no-no, like the ones that you blow into. So if you don't have a voice that's really good at yelling, i.e. you're not a loud person, like my co-coach, sorry, I keep talking about her, but she's like the opposite of me in most aspects. She has a really hard time yelling sometimes. Like, she just naturally just like can't do it. But me, I'm Greek, I'm Mediterranean, I'm always loud. So I have no problem yelling, and I have no problem projecting. But if you are not, I highly recommend you buy an electronic whistle. It's kind of weird. It's the ones that referees use. You can buy them on Amazon for like $20. They're great. I have one because you can't take your masks off right now due to regulations. Even coaches, we can't take them off at all. So the best way to do that and to avoid taking your mask off to use a whistle is to get one of these electronic ones, and wherever you point it, that's where the noise goes for the majority, and it's a really high-pitched squeaking noise. Great investment. Amazing investment. I highly recommend it. They are on Amazon. I will try and find the one that I bought, and I will link it down below for you if you want to check it out. So that would be the end of today's video. Thanks for joining me in my home office here, aka where I live. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video. Good job, team. What else? Yeah. I think that's everything. I'm sure editing Mara will throw in something if I forget. If I've forgotten to say it. Yeah, I think that's everything. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Something like majorly important. That's all I can think of right now.